reseated, we can begin our deliberations. I'd like this slide to be offed, this one, and these four. As they say, after all the speeches are over, the real business begins. So let's roll up our sleeves and really talk about what's where and how. So we're getting into the nuts and bolts of CSR now as we speak and as it is now unfolding. Just push to the next slide. This presentation is actually divided into two parts. The first part is fairly general. It tries to tell you what we want to do in the CSR space. And the second part is about the Act and the rules that are being framed under the Act. So we will, I hope, at the end of this session, have a very clear picture in our minds as to exactly what the government means by CSR, how is it that we are to do it, what's the space for NGOs or corporates or other actors in the drama, etc., etc. So we'll have loads of time for questions as well. This particular slide is about respecting the fact that we would like corporates to come on board. And this whole initiative of having legislation is not about forcing anyone to do anything, but to try and build an enabling environment. Next, please. We believe that corporates are, in any case, many of them, doing a lot in this area. Now that comes with a qualified provision. Many are doing nothing. You might well say most are doing nothing. But there are a whole lot of them who are doing a lot. And it would be stupid on our part to discount that. But because there are quite a few who are doing a lot, we hear the same examples repeated ad nauseum. We want to widen that circle, bring in many, many more who want to do more, and to try and provide space for them. Next, please. The second bullet is important here, and that's what I said in my speech in the beginning, that for individual companies or NGOs or groups of people, it may be difficult. And we are trying to find approaches where we will be able to bring people together. Next, please. When I unfold the provisions of the bill, I want you to remember that the idea here is not what each company will do. Idea is not how they will also do it. We would like to leave much of that initiative to the companies themselves, their boards, their CSR committees, their policies. They should be individualistic and suited to themselves, and in areas where they themselves feel they can make a difference. Next, please. Now, we are trying, of course, here to say there's a rich heritage. Whenever we talk of CSR, invariably we get long homilies about each company's heritage, what is in its genes, what is in its DNA, how they've been doing CSR from the day they were born. Even the founders of those companies had grandfathers who had done something or the other. So that's all very well, and we acknowledge that with great deal of humility. But right now, what is it that we need to do is what's going to unfold before us. Next. So, this is the point. Our CSR is ours. It has to be distinctly Indian. What do we mean when we say ours? What is theirs? Is ours different even from our immediate neighbors, Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan? Or is it different from the West, or from China, or from Europe, or from America? Intrinsically, of course, we will have to chart out our own path of progress. But our problems, our social problems, development problems, human problems, we must set out to address those. And therefore, to a large extent, as you will see in the bill, this kind of CSR we are trying to make as measurable in rupee terms as possible. It is, of course, we can say that the whole development agenda, why doesn't the government do it? What's the need for having corporates coming in or civil society coming in? And you heard that from Mrs. Birla herself when she said that that is not just the government's agenda alone. Government alone perhaps cannot tackle all our multifarious problems. It's for all of us, including the corporate sector, to hold hands and come to it together. Next, please. This is something that I spoke about. How do we combine? How do we get people together, corporates together, civil society, government, different actors in the drama, how they can put their hands together. We're trying to provide a facilitation process for that. Now, every one of you in this room should know these provisions by heart and should be able to repeat them backwards by the time you leave this room. If you do not know this, then you are ignorant. Let me be very blunt. There are times when it pays to be right there, right on the button. This is the legislation, and you should know it. If you are in the field of CSR and you do not know the legislation, then I'm sorry, you cannot call yourself a CSR person. This tells you who will do CSR as per the Act. And you will see that section 135(1) is divided into two. I wish they had made it 1 and 2, but they haven't. They have clubbed two important ideas into one single sentence. The first, and here I need you to look not at the numbers, but the intervening word, which is or. So this is not and. It's 5 crores or 500 or 1,000. So you can be a 1,000 crore company and have a profit of 1 rupee. And you would still be in the CSR space. You could have a net worth of 500 crores, a sales turnover of 2 rupees, and you would still be in the corporate space, in the space that is for CSR. So this is about or. What's the second part? The second part is, again, mandatory. If you are one of these companies, then you must have a 3-member committee. The names of these 3 individuals, as you will see after this, also needs to be reported. So this committee will also have an independent director as a member. So this part has to be constituted, and in the returns that you will submit to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, we will ask you to name these 3 persons and the kind of director that they are. So if it's a functional director, a company nominee, or a representative of the ministry, whatever you have, but one of them must be an independent director. That's why in part 2, it says you must reveal the composition. This becomes important when we go to the next slide. What will this committee do? What's the reason for asking us that we need to know the names of these persons? The reason is that they have a task to perform. And each one of them will be individually liable for the task that they will perform. So this is not about the collective responsibility of the board. This is about each member of this committee being answerable. And you can now see the weight of responsibility that rests on their shoulders. Number 1, they will formulate the corporate social responsibility policy. Have any one of you been associated with policy formulation? What are yes, ma'am. Let's ask you. What is a policy?
It gives in nutshell the entire focus of what the management will do as part of their CSR or environment.
Or any other subject.
Any other
A
subject.
policy is a policy, whether it's CSR or marketing or production or HR. Every company has many policies. But typically, what is a policy? Anyone else? Just one quick answer. Sorry? It's an official stand. All right. Anyone else? What is it? What does it set out? What does the policy set out?
Provides the it provides the guide rails of the do's and don'ts.
So it provides the broad contours of what the company is setting out to do. But like most, how does this particular policy differ from this broad contours business? Do you see a difference here? Why is this policy different? Sorry? Why is this CSR policy different from the broad brushstrokes that we talked about?
The broad framework of policies for an organization are invariably inward-looking because it adapts to certain standard norms and practices. And
Please
procedures.
read. The answer is in 3A.
Formulate.
The answer is before your very eyes.
Schedule 7.
It
specific.
adheres to the schedule given, which is
No.
a framework, right?
There are 3 specific words in 3A.
Formulate and recommend to the board.
No expenditure, no monitoring. Yes. The word is activities. Your policy will list every single activity that you wish to take up in the coming financial year. Every one of you would have read or been part of some policy or the other. And 37 years of life in the bureaucracy, I must have read 1,000 policies. Not one policy ever, even by mistake, lists any activity. Policies by themselves are broad guidelines. Why is this policy different? This policy will annex to it the list of every single activity in CSR which the company proposes to do in the coming year. If the list is not there, the policy is automatically annulled. Therefore, those of you who will write policy for corporates will make sure that you have the activities in place. What does B say? For what? So, my friend, if you list an activity, you will also list the amount of expenditure. See how much you need to commit yourselves. So no wishy-washy waffle here. No soap bubbles in the wind. You will list an activity and you will say how much you will spend in the coming year on that activity. And then what about C? Who will monitor? Sorry? Exactly. How? Absolutely. A mechanism in place. What mechanism? Any corporate entity who can tell me if there is a board level committee, what kind of monitoring mechanism would you want to put in place? Any ideas? Yes, ma'am. From whom? What's the mechanism? What's the mechanism for monitoring? You are a member of the CSR committee. You're sitting on the board. You have a policy in front of you. Your CMD asks you, how are you monitoring?
Can I answer this
The
question?
process.
So
Sorry? From whom? By whom?
May I answer this question, sir?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, so I've been working in the corporate area as well, but right now I'm representing an NGO. Being on the other side, what we need to evaluate is multifold.
What is the mechanism?
So you
What
have
is the mechanism? Anyone?
One
Yes,
is
ma'am.
you
Let me hear. No.
beneficiaries have to.
Okay, let's see. Suppose one of you is an independent director and you are in that committee and you want to know what the hell is happening in this company.
We need to measure
Who
the
is
impact.
doing my CSR? Who the hell is responsible here? How am I going to monitor? From whom will I get a monthly feedback? Where's the team? Who are the people? Where the hell is the event happening? How will you know? How many of you are HR professionals? I want an answer because I too am an HR professional. That's most HR guys go into CSR anyway. The first is the people. In the monitoring mechanism, who are the persons? What are their names? What are their designations? When I'm an independent director, I want to know from the CMD, who in this company is responsible for CSR? What's his designation? What's his name? Who is he? I want him to come and see me every month. Every month when he sees me, I want this MIS. I want to formulate an MIS with this person and his team. In a monitoring mechanism, the HR question is the first question. If I were one of those directors, my neck would be on the chopping block, as you will shortly see. I would be held individually responsible for every activity and for every rupee spent. And by God, if I'm going down, I'd like to take the company with me. So I would want to know, Mr. CMD, who here is the CSR guy in your company? Open up, tell me the names. Give me the team that's going to lead the CSR activities. It is from that person and that team that I want the monitoring reports. So in the monitoring mechanism, which will be set up, the first part is the human beings. The second part is the systems. Systems. In collaboration with those human beings, what system of monitoring am I going to set up? What kind of MIS will I develop for my company? And how will I monitor month to month, fortnight to fortnight, quarterly to quarterly? How will I monitor? Remember that if there are shortfalls, the committee members are individually responsible. They have to answer. And by Jove, if they have to answer, they'll make a large section of the company also answer. Right? Next, please. Is the policy a company secret? Can you shovel the policy under the carpet, stick it under the pillow, make sure nobody ever sees it? Somebody asks you, you always say, of course we have a policy. You want to know? I'll send it to you next year. This policy has to be part of the public domain. Not only will us minions in the ministry, the so-called faceless babus, take a look at it, but worldwide, everybody must be able to see it, track it, know it. And if there are enemies of your company, they will try and see whether you're actually implementing those activities. What is more frightening is 4B. Would I ever like to be a member of this committee? No. Look at 4B. Ensure that the activities are undertaken by the company. What if they are not? What if they are not undertaken? Many of you work in corporates or wherever. Do policies actually happen? Policies are pieces of paper, man. They're stuck somewhere. Who cares? Do I look at the policy every day? Of course not. Who does? You'd be an idiot if you did. Most policies are out there somewhere. Company employees know or sense it somewhere, but they don't read it every day. But here, this 3-member committee is responsible for every activity, every rupee, every part of its actually happening. And if that activity does not happen, they are individually and severally responsible. There's no escaping. I saved the hard part for the post-coffee. In the morning, it was all fluff and nice words. But you will see now that the brass tacks are indeed tacks. T-A-C-K-S, not T-A-X. Because these will hurt if you do not measure up. Next, please. Somebody said 10%. Oh, well, terrific. Work hard. I shall look at your return next year. And if you've done 10%, my friend Muzaifa, I shall call you to the National Awards function. 2% was a hard battle. It was really hard. We had to literally use large-scale calipers and pliers to take out the tooth from the mouth of the corporates. 2% was a damned hard battle. People kept asking us, why is the decimal missing? Why not 0.2? What is this crap about 2? And then somebody says 10, and I said, Muzaifa, you're a hero, man. But if you say it, terrific. Next year when I get your report on my computer screen, I shall look at it with great interest. But let's for the moment say that 2% is what it is. And if you have a small budget, anything ranging from 25 lakhs upwards, you would need to be in the CSR space. Now, he also asked this very extraordinary question, that if your net profits average dips below 5 crores, will you dissolve or will you wind up the CSR department of the company? Question 1, very few corporates that I know of have anything like a CSR department. Most companies, when I ask them, what's happening in your CSR, the person has to call up the private secretary calls up the HR manager calls up some assistant manager, and they try to find out some reluctant person who does CSR in addition to A, B, C, D, E. So he comes up and says, always, I also do CSR, sir. Which is all right, fair enough. But this won't happen now on, because the August committee will not accept somebody in the backwoods. So that scenario is going to change hugely. And therefore, CSR departments may well be opened, even if they are 1-person, 2-person departments. But like most things, companies know that if they're going through a dip, what are they hoping? When a company goes through a dip, what does it hope? Sorry? No. What do they hope? Exactly. The first thing about a dip is, it's a dip is a temporary dip. It's a blip. A dip is a blip. So hopefully, next year, there will be an upturn. So why would they make one department disappear? If you go through a dip, do you disband HR? Do you disband marketing? Do you disband production? You strengthen them. You don't disband them. And therefore, the answer lies in the question itself. That where you feel that there is something going wrong, you actually try and make it better. You don't wish it away. Then, is 2% mandatory? Is the 2% spend mandatory? Yes or no? Right, who says yes? Don't hesitate, flash your hands up, nothing wrong with it. All right, those who say no, why no? And those who know the answer, don't speak. Why no? Why no? Then what is this legislation about? Why are we fooling ourselves? Why are we here? At least. Is that compulsory? Is that mandatory? If it were not, why have the bill? If it were not, what is the drama about? If it were not, why are we all sitting here? If it were not, why am I wasting my breath? So is it yes or no? What's the answer? The answer is no. All right, sorry for leading you up the garden path. All I wanted to say was, whereas we are urging you to spend 2% of your net profits, you are at liberty to say, I hate CSR. It's a load of rubbish. It's for companies to do what they should do. It's for governments to do what they should do. Why should companies do all of this? We pay you tax. And that's what Steve Jobs said. At a lovely town hall meeting, the members of the town committee asked Steve Jobs, I say, you're making millions and millions of bucks. Why the hell don't you spend something on our community out here? We're poor people. And what did he say? He is famously reported to have said, for those of you who are not comfortable, go to the government. And finally he said, I pay my taxes. Of course, the fact that he didn't, and that he employed the largest army of tax consultants that human history has ever known, is also well known to all of us. The fact remains, though, that here, the reporting is mandatory, not the doing. You have to report to the government every year in a template to be specified by us what you have been doing in CSR, how much you have been spending. And if you have not spent 2%, why not? The reasons must be given to whom? The reasons must be given to whom? The expenditure has been declared to whom? Yes. Who am I? You will need to go public. It has to be in your annual report. It has to be in your website. It has to be visible to every single stakeholder. Why you have not spent 2% is not a secret. It is out in the public domain in bold letters. So you can decide what excuses you want to give. If you're late, of course, there's the traffic. If you haven't turned up, there's always the fact that you ran temperature. But whatever the reason you want to give, it has to be in the public domain for not spending 2%. That's all. But if you don't report, then what? You can say, CSR is claptrap, we don't believe in CSR, why is government punishing us? Why don't they collect 2% tax and be done with it? All the blah, blah, blah we've been listening for the last 3 years. But that's history. If you don't report, then what? Now, all of you sitting here can ask me the simple question. We're just letting corporates go, then why have the legislation? 2% is not mandatory. If they don't report, what the hell? So they will neither report, nor they will do the 2%. Then why all this time waste here? The answer is coming up, so it'll be a nice, pleasant surprise. Sorry?
Stakeholders who will
What will the poor stakeholder do? I'm a stakeholder in so many companies. I cry. That's all I can do. I'm powerless. What will I tell my CMD? What will I tell my board members? They're all dadas, man. I can't do a thing. But now I can. How can I? I will show you. Next. So, before I reveal that secret, this one let's look over. What are the activities that are envisioned under CSR? Take a good read because I'm going to ask you. I will not test your reading skills, but I will ask you, what is not here? Just think in your minds after you've read this. What is not here? This goes to the next. If you finish this slide, there's one more coming up. Just give it another minute, then switch. Okay, next slide. Just think in your mind as to what is not here. I'll be grateful if Gayatri would take that down. Be useful for us when we are looking at Schedule 7 again. What's missing? And the other question I'm going to ask you, as always, the devil lies in the details. So what does the last line mean? I am trying to preempt questions by asking them myself. And rather than answer them myself, I'm getting you to answer them. Right. If every one of you have read through this, and I hope your speed reading skills are okay, let's start with raised hands. What's missing here? Yes, ma'am? Employee welfare. Okay, let's just write this down for the time being, and we'll ask ourselves whether that really is missing or not. Yes, sir? Just say disability is missing. Very true. Yes? All right, art and culture. Terrific. Yes, sir?
Primary healthcare.
We have something about health up there, I'm sure. Just go back. So, unlike promotion of education, the ones on health are specific. They are not generic, right? Is that what you're saying? All right, good question. So, yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
Child right and rural resource management.
Well, don't be that
That's
specific.
two different things. Child right is different.
Rural development, hunger, poverty, we have all that
No,
up.
that I'm talking about
But
basically
child,
about,
children and child rights, okay, yes, yes, sir. Disaster relief, okay. That's there somewhere. Yeah, absolutely. No, but specifically if you're talking about disaster relief, then I suppose you have to go to the Prime Minister of India and deposit it in his fund. But short of that, there's nothing direct. Yes, anyone else? Empowerment of whom? There is something on women's empowerment, but remember, the whole CSR is about empowerment as generic. It's not about only women. Well, it's about people, of whom women constitute a huge proportion. But even the poor individual needs to be empowered. We must give him or her a voice. And CSR is about empowering people. Yes, yes. Infrastructure. All right? Yes? Sorry? Study and research is a CSR activity? Not sure. Yes? An activity, but not necessarily a CSR activity.
Watershed. Watershed promotion.
Yes? Water,
Watershed.
watershed. Are issues of water up there? Sorry? We put it in the environment. Environmental sustainability is about water. Yes? Yes, of course. Of course, of course. India is graying less rapidly than most others. But yes, we are growing. We are graying. Yes. Anyone else? Okay. So let's stop here and ask ourselves that we have a whole. The idea of speaking to you on the subject is this was a very small list which was appended to the Act. Those of you who have are associated with the Millennium Development Goals will realize that the wording is almost verbatim from there. And because they are Millennium Development Goals for the whole world, therefore they are generic to India, but they don't tackle Indian issues. There are a whole host of Indian issues that need to get in here. So we will expand this. We're in the process of expanding it. What will not be here is the one that was mentioned right in the beginning. Employee welfare will not be part of this list. That is strictly a no. Right. Next, please. Of course, totally. What is it here for? I don't intend to take it back with me and make it a policy of the IICA. It is a completely public document, and you're most welcome to attack Gayatri hereafter and grab it from her. Now, yeah, now this is the difficult part and the more, what shall I say, the more embarrassing part. So next slide, please. This is the tough ask. If you do not report, then what are the consequences? So friends, who would want 25 lakhs plus 3 years imprisonment? The word here is not or. In the first slide, I pointed out the ors with the deliberate intention that when I come to this slide, there is no or here, it's and. So it's not a pleasant experience that our 3 friends, the directors of the company, will undergo. Sorry? As I said, I myself would be very uncomfortable. Next one, please. Now, for example, those who are in the monitoring team and who are found not to be implementing. But primarily, it refers to the members themselves and the officers who work with them. Next, please. Where is this part of the rules? Yeah, next. Now, please, that was the act. And I'm sure from the number of questions that we have asked of each other, many of you would now know the act pretty much. But that's all there is in the act. Short and sweet, just one section, and the punishment in the section preceding the real section. I'm very amused by the way lawmakers actually write the law. They prescribe the punishment before they even tell you what you're supposed to be doing. So section 134 comes before section 135. When I was reading this act, I was utterly amused, or rather bemused, by the way lawmakers write the law. But there it is. They sort of lead you up the garden path and then leave you there. Right, so when we were writing the rules, it was important for us to know that that being the act, what should we put in the rules? Now remember, these rules are not yet official. But we are authorized to share them with you because we are in the process of trying to collect feedback from as many people as we can. And even when these rules are in the public domain, when the act becomes an act, we shall put them out in our website for at least 3 weeks to receive from all interested parties as many opinions as are available. And only thereafter will the rules become official. So I'm sharing this with you just so that we could discuss them, get some questions on them, and see how we should go forward. Because none of us are repositories of all knowledge. It's only when we share with everyone that we get the proper kind of feedback. So it says, usually we would like every single CSR activity to be a project or a program. As Mrs. Birla asked me in the morning, can I write a check to Rotary Club and go to sleep? Under the rules, no. You can't write a check and go to sleep. What we are asking you to do is not to indulge in charity, distribution. You walk into a children's play school or whatever, and you distribute some mobile handsets and walk away. That's not going to be, see, it's not about gifts. It's not about charity. It's not about giveaways. This has to be mostly projects, programs, 1 year, 3 year, 5 years, whatever. And the activities in your policy document must show that up. We've also said here, yes, of course. Let me just finish this last part. It says, we also welcome business models, and Michael Porter's whole essay is about this, that if you have innovative business models which also serve a social cause, then they too are most welcome. Your question, sir.
Many of the large companies have set up their own foundations. So the whole expenses of those foundations will also then qualify as a CSR expense, obviously. So is there no anomaly in this case? How do you propose to get a handle on this?
Yeah, this is so vital a question that almost a whole page of the rules is devoted to it. And therefore, you will see when we go next that this is a question that troubled all of us a great deal. There's no harm in mentioning that many corporates actually use the foundation to actually reroute the monies back to themselves. Foundations are really the fronts of many companies for all kinds of skullduggery, malfeasance, and the underhand operations that companies indulge in. So the word foundation attracts a great deal of skepticism and a great deal of doubt in people's minds. What is this foundation? Where does it come from? What is it doing? Is it just a channel or a source or a front that the company is using? Does it flaunt the foundation as some kind of advertorial to tell people that we also do so much social good? So there's a whole page, and we're coming to that. Next, please. I asked this question in the morning, that if you were to ask what is corporate India doing in the area of health, so we would like to know, and you will see this when I come to the template, that we will also ask you to tell us what is the sector in which your spending happens. Is it education? Is it livelihoods? Is it health? But also we're going to ask you the geographic region where you are doing this work. Now, you know there are 272 backward districts in the country as given out by the Planning Commission. There are 44 Naxal affected districts and so on. So very often the questions in Parliament is, can the Honourable Minister tell us how much of this CSR activity has actually happened in Naxal affected areas? And it would be a pity if we could not give you the answer. Same question could be framed, how much of CSR activity is happening in the backward districts of India? A valid question. You cannot fault a member of parliament for asking that question. How would we answer it? So the template, as you will see when we come to it, has these columns which we would request you to fill up so that we are able to give considered answers here. Then, This was the monitoring mechanism that we talked about, and you will need to indicate that in the template of your return as to what is the mechanism that you have set in place in your company. Next. One of our worries was this volunteering business. And a whole host of people were on the yay-sayers, and there were a whole host of people on the naysayers. And it was hard to take, as we do in Parliament, a divide on opinion or a vote. But the fact remains that volunteering is a difficult issue. And it's hard to convert volunteering into monetary terms. Because the question here is, how much did you spend? And the moment you talk of a volunteer, and you say the volunteer's whole salary, would that be right or wrong? Quite obviously, wrong. Because the volunteer is not there, he's actually an employee of your company. His salary wouldn't count. But many companies actually tot up the salaries of their volunteers and show it as CSR. So generally speaking, volunteering would not count. You are free to do as much voluntary work as you can, but we believe that if you are a true volunteer, you would not want recognition. You do it because you want to do it. You do it in your spare time. You do it on an ad hoc basis. You do volunteering when you are free, when you want to. Observe the following example. A group of executives of the level of joint general manager in a public sector undertaking get together every Sunday. They go to their medicine cabinets and they find that a lot of the medicines given to them by their generous employers are lying unused. So they put on their loafers and their faded jeans and they walk across to the nearest slum cluster, and hey presto, they distribute these medicines and come back. And they do this whenever they find time, whichever Sunday they're home. Is this CSR? Now believe you me, this was pushed as a very great example of CSR by that very company. And in that audience there was poor old me. And it was said to me, hey Dr. Chatterjee, you better put this down in your rules. So what people try to slip by you is indeed alarming. But the kind of people or the kind of perceptions that people have about volunteering is of this nature. However, what we're trying to do here is, if the volunteering is part of the project, that in this project of 100 rupees, 20 volunteers will, twice a week, do 3 hours of voluntary work in this slum cluster for this school by company orders. And through that process will be part of the project that we're undertaking in this school. And we attach to these 3 hours this much of monetary value being part of their salary. Then that's a project which actually has volunteering as part of it, recognized as part of the program. The employees are down on a roster, their names are there, whether the report or not is checked. Then it is possible that we might consider volunteering. Next, please. Now, this big question. Trust. Do we repose trust in trusts? Why are trusts the most untrustworthy of all human mechanisms? The moment you hear the word trust, what happens to you? You breed distrust. Behind the word trust, there are whole layers of people trying to fool you and the whole of the world also. So when you look at foundation or trust or things like this, you always wonder, what the hell are they up to? What are they doing? So one of the things that we shall very closely watch, let me give you an example. The company pays to the trust which it has set up a sum of 100 rupees. The trust spends 1000 rupees on the projects. Where does this trust get the other 900 from? A trust gets 100 rupees from its parent company. On a project, it spends 1000 rupees. Where do the other 900 rupees come from? That means that 100 rupees is leveraged by the trust in the name of the company to attract a further 900 rupees. Okay? If this is so, in the 2% spend, will I record 1000 rupees or 100 rupees? What was I under pressure to do? Dr. Chatterjee, you are absolutely daft. You really are mad. Our name. We leverage 900 bucks. How can you not credit it? How can you say it was only 100 bucks? You have to give us 1000 bucks of credit. Yes or no? The answer is no. We will not accept the leveraging money. If you have given 100 rupees to your foundation, what the foundation has done with those 100 rupees are all that you can report. This is one of the important ideas. Very often, you have what are known as untied funds. The company says to the foundation, here are 100 rupees, enjoy yourselves. That's our contribution to society. What shall I do with this? Is this a CSR? The company says, we have sent out 100 rupees to the foundation. Our foundation is a social foundation. So our contribution to the foundation is our CSR, period. Don't ask any questions here. We've written a check of 100 rupees to our foundation. We have set up our foundation with the objective of doing social good. Therefore, our contribution to our foundation is our CSR. Yes or no? Here again, the answer is no. You have to tell us, with those 100 rupees that was given to the foundation, what is it that you expected the foundation to do? And did they do? Because that CSR committee has to monitor that that activity was actually undertaken. Next. Many companies came to us and said, when we set up a foundation, we need to set up a corpus. When you set up a corpus, you don't spend the money. Because the corpus is what the foundation is all about. The foundation of the foundation is the corpus. If there is no corpus, there is no foundation. Generally speaking, the interest from the corpus is what foundations spend on CSR. And that's a legitimate way of looking at things. So what did we say here? That initial contribution, which is the corpus, may be included as part of CSR spend just for that year. Interest on corpus accrued to the organization then cannot be, if you use the interest to build the corpus itself or just to accumulate the money, then that cannot be a CSR activity. But if you use that money for doing social good or for undertaking CSR activity, then it shall count. But adding to the corpus with the interest that is accrued is only more and more money accumulation. Next. Now, a company may also use trusts and foundations which it has not itself set up. It doesn't mean necessarily that SR will use only SR Foundation, or Tata will use only Tata Foundation, or Birla will use only Birla Foundation. They may. But if they want to, they are free to use other foundations, other trusts, if they want to implement their projects. And there is no bar or ban on doing that. Next. This we already spoke about. This is about collaborative effort. You're free to approach other corporates. Next. Many companies asked us that we are Indian, but we are also global. We have undertaken mining activities in Africa. And the African government also says that you must spend so much on CSR in the country of Ethiopia or Nigeria or wherever your project is. So what we spend on our company in Nigeria as CSR is part of the spending of the company. So we should allow, you should allow us to show what we spend in Africa as our CSR. What would be your answer? They were disappointed when we said no. They said you cannot be so nationalistic. CSR is a global endeavor. If there is a poor man in Africa, so what? There's a poor family in Africa, so what? If there's a disempowered woman in Africa, we're helping her too. Why? It's our money. It's Indian money. It's Indian corporate money. A human being is a human being, irrespective of color or creed. So if we do CSR in Africa or Timbuktu, why should we not count it? What's your answer? Well, we said, sorry folks, that's a wonderful argument, but we say no. What you spend in India is all that will count. You can keep your arguments to yourself for the time being. Now, this part, yes.
I have a question. So some of the global companies, MNCs, do have global programs. Like in IBM, we have 170 countries where we do, but there is common programs. So the spend is done here. I mean,
If
but
it's
the
spent in
is
India, it will
counted.
count.
No,
Sorry?
spend may be counted at the global headquarters level
Of
because
course,
it's a
of
government
course.
program.
You may do
global
so.
program.
But we will take on board what you spend in India as part of your program.
Okay, so though it should have gone through the accounting process.
No, no process. You tell us what you spend, period.
That's it. Okay.
Suppose you send that your global foundation is $100 million, of which 2 million are spent in India. You just
Okay.
need to tell us, that's it.
Okay.
There's no process other than that. We are happy with whatever you do for us in India, more than happy. Perfectly fine, because they're not registered as an Indian company. So whatever they can do in India, we would welcome it. See, they have no brownie points here. They're a global foundation. So if there are funds which come to India for the underprivileged in India, it's a great effort, and we would acknowledge that. Right.
How do you calculate profit?
For them? No.
When you calculate 3 years average profit?
Ha, that I will tell you. There's a special section on that. In fact, I'll hand over the section to you. If you're a good finance man, you can read the fine print. Yes, ma'am. Yes. If it's part of your project, let's suppose, see, a one-off thing may not count. But if it's part of your project of awareness generation, if it's part of your project of increasing the level of awareness of, let's say, malnutrition or disease or whatever. Because if you're doing a polio program, it's not just about injecting. You would need to increase awareness levels, hold events, invite people, all of that will then count.
I'm talking about event like empowering women, and the NGO starts an event wherein the people come to know that so many people have been empowered through that particular NGO. And a minister or somebody comes over, and if an MNC sponsors that particular event, will that be considered as a CSR part of it?
If it's one-off, no. You must say, the corporate must say that in our list of activities, we believe that empowerment of whatever segment of society is important, and we have earmarked 10% of our total CSR on awareness generation. In this awareness generation program, we will do 10 workshops or 11 workshops. And you do them whichever way you want to. That's perfectly legitimate. Okay? Preferably. Just having a one-off event, doesn't really earn much mileage.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes.
Where you spoke about these foundations routing money to their foundations, the other organizations, say if it's a Tata's or whether it's a Birla's or whichever, and they're spending out of that on their projects. So you mentioned they also have an option to give it to other organizations as well. What I would suggest is, maybe please correct me if I'm wrong. I feel personally, it should also be put like a clause, where they're not just putting in their own projects, but they earmark maybe just 25%, but they have to do that. Otherwise it's really pointless, approaching or talking to those guys. It really doesn't make sense. They clearly say, guys, our hands are full. Standard reply, So I guess
Generally have to
maybe
dance to their
you should
tunes.
put that into one of your clauses and, make our lives easier.
All right. Good point. So Gayatri, make a note of that. Okay.
Sir, one question.
Yes.
Is there a specific ratio of the spend that is budgeted for an annual year for the beneficiaries directly versus expenses on volunteers, training them, all of that?
No, not at all.
Is that all
What
considered as the CSR?
Yeah, totally. See, irrespective of what I'm saying to you in jest, the fact is, we would like companies to determine their own CSR programs. We would like companies to use their initiative. We would like companies to use their ethos. We would like companies to use their own resources, whether human or physical or financial. It's for them to do. We are only giving you a broad framework. We don't want to micromanage anything. Yes, sir.
There is a concept of administrative expenses in the Foreign Contribution Regulation Act for NGOs, what they receive on foreign money. I think this concept will also be brought in as the administrative cost of the CSR.
Of course. See, a project has many costs. HR costs, admin costs, miscellaneous costs, all of that. When I say project, any amounts of money that go into the project cost are all admissible.
Excuse
Yes,
me.
sir. We can, but I think it's too early now. I don't want to do so much regulation that our wheels come off. Yeah.
So if every country takes a nationalistic view, the world will be a very poor place. I work for an American charity based in the US. If the US had the same kind of rules that all money raised in the US is tax deductible only if it is used within the US, nothing would flow out.
No, I don't get the comparison.
When you say that Indian money spent in Africa should not be deductible here, it should not count as CSR money, aren't we taking a very nationalistic view?
Of course
a
we
very
are.
narrow nationalistic
Of
view.
course,
And
of
if all
course.
countries did
Yes,
that,
yes.
the world will be a very poor place.
Yes, I acknowledge that.
And
But
if
here
India
look-
wants to be a global citizen,
Yes.
wants to be part of the big league in the world, shouldn't India take a larger view and say, we are more fortunate than the Africans and let's help them?
That's a kind of
Yeah, if the
loaded
Am-
statement.
if the
We're more
Ameri-
fortunate than the
if the-
Africans.
if the
No.
Americans did that,
No.
not 1 cent of the money that a lot of foundations give my charity is used in the US. We spend it in Africa, we spend it in India, we spend it in
And
80
and
developing
that, and
countries.
that counts towards what? I mean,
Well, they get tax
do
deductibility there.
you-
They
they-
have no
these
CSR.
monies that you spend outside the country are tax deductible in the US?
Absolutely.
All right.
Completely. Not even
That's a good
50%, 100%. It's true.
Yeah.
There is no law on CSR in the US.
Exactly.
We are a registered tax deductible company. So
But
any
this is not
company
to
that
do
gives
with
us money-
taxes. You
I
know,
know,
this is
I know, but the principle is
So,
the same.
Yes and
See,
no.
we are all Indians.
Yes
here, we
and
are
no,
looking at it
but
from an
anyway,
Indian
right
point of view.
now our decision is no, so we'll stay with
All
that.
right.
Excuse
Okay,
me.
Which is yes, please.
This side.
Yes.
There are other expenses like your IT infrastructure, people, processes that would be incurred to.
So
create-
long as your conscience is clear, my project is going to cost the company so much. You're clean.
Okay, so
We're
there
not
is no
going to-
proportionate to the expense. met.
Nothing. You may say that my costs here are 90% are admin costs. Your costs are your call. Why would I get into that? Not interested.
Okay.
You tell me this is a CSR project, this is what I implement. That's it. So I do not, or none of us, want to micromanage you in any way. Please establish, because it's going to be out in the public domain. So people will judge you by what you report. And if you genuinely feel that for a project 90% should be on the admin costs, fine. Why would we argue with it? There's a whole constituency outside which would look at it and judge you. Right, so we are also saying here, most importantly, the next one. What kind of competence do corporates have on CSR? What's the frank answer? Zero, says one. What competence do companies have on CSR? Even the person who's multitasking, what is the competence on CSR alone? Pretty much zero. The respect for corporates is humongous. I'll leave out the Tata companies because there are some companies, let's face it, which have a lot of CSR expertise. And it would be stupid on our part to say that they have zero expertise. There are companies in India, excellent companies, who have superb CSR skills. They could actually export their skills, so much do they have. So really speaking, it would be stupidity to say that they don't. But if you take the average Indian company which manufactures light bulbs or electrical wires or whatever else they do, what is the level of competence in CSR? Well, it goes from zero to limited, right?
I would like to ask one question.
Sure, sure.
Instead of using the word competence, can we also say sensitivity?
Of course. I mean, you can use a generic term. You can use a generic term.
No,
but
what I mean
here, the
it's
worry
not,
is...
It's not the semantic of it. All I'm trying to say is if a purchase manager has that sensitivity and
Yeah.
he can do some alternate buying or alternate sourcing,
Sure.
his reach, that is, if I give a purchase order to a NGO rather than a charity check, my reach is of the whole turnover, not profits.
Fantastic.
So
And
is
that's
it
the
not
company
is
culture
it
that's
not
speaking here.
temperament or is it just a competency?
No, no. What you say is of immense value. Now, here is a Tata person speaking why. Because they generate the CSR agenda in the very DNA of their organizations. People actually think CSR words irrespective of where they are. But the permeation of that culture is a very rare commodity. However, acknowledging that, my question was angled a bit differently to come to another point. Whereas there may be, let us even assume that there is CSR sensitivity, what is the competence, HR competence within the company to implement CSR projects? Who knows what is CSR? Who knows how to implement a project? Who knows what is a CSR project and what is not? Who has implemented projects on CSR for at least 5 or 6 years? Who has read or studied or acquired knowledge by part of a course? Who has undertaken a certificate course? Who has undertaken any studies in CSR? Would the average Indian company have HR resource in CSR? There are means very, very few. If you leave out just, say, 2% of Indian companies, 98% of Indian companies don't have HR competence in the CSR field. Is that wrong or right? It's perfectly natural. It's neither wrong nor right. I make bulbs. I manufacture filaments. I churn out copper wires. I do a foundry. Why on blessed earth would I have CSR competence? Therefore, it's neither wrong nor right. It's only natural. 98% of Indian companies don't have CSR competence, nor should they perhaps, because they didn't need to do CSR till today. Is that scenario changing? Will it change? Well, if it were to, let's presume that with the legislation, we needed HR competence. Suppose a company were to spend 5 crores, 10 crores, 15 crores, however small the budget. It would need some people in the company who would have some professional competence in CSR. They could do it one of two ways. They could either train people who are already here, send them out to a course so that they are professionally trained, or they could get people to come and train them, or they could hire from the market. Look at the third option. Can you hire CSR trained people from the market? Can you hire a marketing professional? Can you hire an MBA? Can you hire an HR professional? Corollary, can you hire a CSR professional?
Why not?
Almost impossible. Question is, where are they? Who is a certified professional? How will we create them? Who will create them? When companies needed good manpower, the Indian government created the MBAs. No private company set up any MBA. It's the government which led the way. When India needed engineers, no private company opened any engineering school. It's the government which opened the IITs. When CSR is a new field, who should lead the way? You might say government. And if it were so, a humble effort is beginning in the IICA, starting August 6th. We're going to put out an advertisement which will actually start the first IICA certified course on CSR. 9 months. Thank you. 9-month course, of which 8.5 months will be online. So you don't have to leave your place of work. You do not have to go anywhere. You have to make only 2 trips to Delhi, to our institute, beautiful institute. You'll enjoy yourselves. We'll look after you well. 1 day at a time. For the entire duration of the 9 months, you will need to come to our institute only twice.
So I must share here, I come from corporate industry and I've been scanning for some course in this area for last nearly 6 months. And there's something which has come up in Vashi lately, I believe.
Please. There are all sorts of, fly-by-night courses, and I don't even want to look at them or recognize them. This will be the first certificate course ever launched in India, an authorized certificate course by the IICA as part of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And we intend to make it one of the best in the world, something that the entire world has never ever done. The first historic step coming out of the first historic legislation. But remember, And let me spend 2 minutes on this. We are going to have 100 sponsored candidates. So companies, because our first output will be in the range of 200, the first year. Then hopefully 2,000, 20,000, 2 lakhs, whatever. But right now in the first year, I want to keep this course very controlled, very quality driven, and very much benchmark. So there will be 100 sponsored candidates from companies, from NGOs, from any organization. If you are organizationally backed, you can send 1 candidate, 2 candidates, 5 candidates, whatever. But the space is 100. So the first 100 candidates from any organization will be taken on board by the IICA. In all likelihood, our advertisement will come out in the first week of May. Now, the second part. 100 more private candidates in the age group from 25 to 50. Everyone is saying CSR is a new professional field. Corporates, NGOs are asking for it. So a lot of people out there want to make their careers in CSR. When you talk of a career, what do you need first? You need to qualify yourself. So this 100 privileged people, first come, first served basis on the scope of a written test, which we will have. 100 persons will be chosen, those who want to qualify themselves and look for a career in CSR. We know, the world knows, that in a very short time, in that boardroom, there will not just be a marketing director or an HR director. More than any one of them, there will be the director CSR. And everybody is aspiring to actually become a CSR professional today. So those who are doing CSR in companies want to qualify themselves, 1 slot. Those outside companies who want to do CSR as a career are the other 100 seats. So I made this observation today just to alert you to the fact that we are aware of the needs of the corporate and the NGO world. And when our advertisement comes out, please feel free to send out people who can be part of us. And if you miss the bus this year, there will be many, many buses in the years to come. Yes, quick question.
Age limit for the first 100 also?
No, you can be 100 years old, but if you are employed by your company, like the US Supreme Court judge who comes in a wheelchair, cannot hear, cannot speak, cannot think, still becomes a US Supreme Court judge because he's a judge for life. Like that, the first 100 who are sponsored candidates, if you are on the rolls of your company, you are most welcome to join us. Sorry? Of organization. We are hoping that we'll keep it at a very, very low cost for the companies, just 1.5 lakhs for the 9 months. That's going to be our course fee. Yes, please?
So these people who will be qualified for this course, they can become an independent director in that CSR company?
Not yet, ma'am. If you come out of your MBA, your aspiration is to become a CMD after 30 years. You start at the bottom. Not yet. But there will be, I think, from the second year. Right now, we need to fill up our seats quickly, so you can beg, borrow, steal if somebody is worth it. We are also hoping, and this I'm not saying in the advertisement, but I can assure you that every one of those 100 people who will be selected will be given an appointment letter in their hands the day the results are declared. I have with me a huge waiting list from corporates who are saying, please give us 5, please give us 10, please give us 4. My 100 is already oversubscribed. So any person who comes into our certificate course will end up 100% with a job.
Excuse me.
Yes, please.
I just want to check, sir. What about the volunteer or individual? If I want to do it myself without sponsoring, is
The
it
whole
all right?
second category is for you.
Okay.
The whole second category is for you. Yes, sir.
Sir, when you know that the demand is so high, why would you limit it to only 200 seats?
Guess. Take a guess. Suppose you were the IICA. Why would you limit it to 200? Look, I can succumb to commercial pressure. I can put up 1,000 seats up there and I know they'll be booked even before I put up my advertisement. But that first year I'm going slow because I myself don't know how that course should be. How closely can I monitor the content? And from that first batch, whom I really want to care for like my own children, to develop them with that kind of individual care, make them my contribution, my institution's contribution to the CSR field, to which I've devoted the rest of my life. This is a noble objective. I'm not here because I'm getting anything out of it. For me, this is something that I've devoted my life to. And therefore, when those 100 people come out, they will be like my own children. People that I've tended to with my own hands. Put into them the very best there is in CSR anywhere in the world. When they go to a corporate and the CMD says, write me a policy and give it to me tomorrow, every one of those 100 people will know how to write a policy overnight. They will hit the ground running. When the independent director says to this guy, give me a monitoring mechanism and I want it yesterday, my professional should be able to do that. I want a company report out that will satisfy the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Give me the report. My professional should be able to do it overnight. That's the litmus test. And I will not get that quality unless I build into my program all of those essentials. What's the role of the NGO? What's the role of the corporate? What's the role of the government? What's the role of the company secretary? All of these are part and parcel of the course that we will do. Just 2 more points. The last 3 months of this 9-month is on project work. So each professional would have done high quality project work before they are recruited. 3 weeks is on corporate or NGO attachment. Every one of these 100 or 200 would be attached to some corporate or some big NGO to acquire expertise in project management. Many are saying to me, please send your students to my company, because at the end of it, we will recruit them. If they are with us for 3 weeks and they are exposed to our culture for 3 weeks, we'll recruit them straight away when they finish the course. So almost in about 90% of the cases, the student who goes for attachment to a corporation is likely to be employed by that organization on completion of the course. So that's one important thing which we are planning to do, and hopefully you guys will take it on. Right, so here we are saying that whatever companies spend on training, education, development of your company personnel in the area of CSR is debitable to your 2%. Any training, any upgradation, any skill development, anything you do for your company personnel for CSR is debitable to that 2%. Next. We've also gone so far as to say that when you hire CSR professionals, their salary, their perks are also debitable to the 2%. So your monitoring mechanism, the HR I spoke about, all of those personnel, they would also be debitable to that 2%. However, all employees and their welfare will not be part of 2%. Next. Compliance is not CSR. Please, don't tell me that you reduce the pH level of your effluents to satisfy the Pollution Control Board and then you put it up as CSR. Compliance of legislation will not count as CSR. It It has to be beyond compliance. Next. Now, let's look at the template. Go for it. Last 5 minutes we'll spend. Yes. Now, look at this carefully. This is what you will need to reply in. We will give you a complete handout or a soft copy of all of this before you go. But this is the annual report that we in the IICA and the Ministry of Corporate Affairs will actually look at each year. And this is what companies will be required to report on. As I mentioned, the sector, the geographic location, the amount you've spent, your net profits, your 2% are all here. Next. Yes. The Ministry of Corporate Affairs. Sorry. The company secretary. The company secretary. It is he normally who is asked by the CMD to file this report each year. Yes.
How is it justified?
If it is a CSR training, if you train any employee in CSR, only then it will count. Right, many of the, this is the last slide actually, many of the stuff, why is it getting a bit warm here? A little bit, AC can go up. AC. We put some warmth into the proceeding, shall we say. Well, these are some of the issues which we're trying to put into Schedule 7, and you will therefore see here that food security has come in, gender equality. We need to have this part. We've put in public health in all its forms. So it comes in now as a standalone item. Next, please. We have the whole of the environment, energy, ecology, biodiversity, skills, employment, welfare measures for the old, the homeless, and the destitute. So you have that there now. Yeah. Yeah, disabilities comes here. The next, please.
Could you explain the first point on the previous
I
slide,
will.
please?
Please look here. Disaster management. Somebody was asking. Then we have promotion of sports, promotion of art, heritage, and culture. Okay. Next. Then we have, we call them now, we've used the right terminology here, the politically correct terminology, the differently abled. We put alternate energy sources. I know, because the ministry itself is called disability. So maybe if Stuti wants it, I'll put it as disability. Yeah, anyway, so we'll take a call. We want to be known as disabled? Okay. Persons with disability? Okay. Yes, ma'am? All right. The youth.
Not only the youth, substance abuse prevention. That's not there. Tobacco, alcohol, and drugs.
Would we put it under public health?
I think
that's why we put public health.
No, I think it has to be more specific. Otherwise,
All right.
public health doesn't
so
include all
take
that.
that down as a specific input. And then, of course, look at the last line, which has now changed dramatically. I'm very particular about last lines, which I told you in Schedule 7 was earlier on, as may be directed. Now we're changing it to other matters which the board may consider to be appropriate in the light of the declared CSR policy of the company. Okay? That makes it much more comfortable and easy for corporates to decide what they want to do. Right? Yes. Is that the last slide? Okay.
Excuse
so
me,
then
Dr.
we'll
Chatterjee.
spend the last 5 minutes on any questions that we have.
So when would this likely to be included in terms of law? I mean, this proposed schedule?
Well, the Rajya Sabha still stands between us and the law. hopefully another 2 or 3 weeks time. Yes, 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 please.
Sir, why there is no specific mention of HIV/AIDS? Because that should be a very specific part of corporate social. Though it is just public health.
In the original schedule, HIV is specifically mentioned. Yes, sir.
So, Dr. Chatterjee, this is Tony from IBM. So, you mentioned in your discussion, you've mentioned the role of corporates, obviously moving this forward in partnership with the NGOs, the IICA. One of the elements within IBM that is quite instrumental in the CSR program is the area of diversity. And I've noticed that on your slide. I'd like to know, how does the IICA define diversity, and how do you actually address
Define
that
diversity?
within the agenda? Yes, diversity in general.
That's a difficult word to define, actually. Frankly, we haven't got around to defining diversity yet. Would you like that to be included in Schedule 7, or is there a specific reason why you're asking me this question?
No, I think the reason why I'm asking is because diversity is so multidimensional. When a corporation addresses diversity, it's on several levels. It can be from ethnicity, it can be gender, it can be sexual orientation, it can be innovation, diversity of thought, culture, experience. And so, for example, at IBM, and I know quite a few of the MNCs also have incorporated this into their CSR agenda, traditionally diversity has to be addressed on multiple levels in order to gain the most competitive advantage for the corporation. So I would see that as a tremendous benefit for the IICA moving forward in order to establish an agenda that also not only addresses all of the areas that are incredibly important that you've already addressed, but I would think diversity to be also an instrumental component of your go-forward strategy.
Okay. Just to clarify this point, I appreciate that greatly. Would this be for diversity in your own company, or generally diversity across organizations?
I think it's diversity across the Indian community.
Yeah, that makes sense, because that would then tie in very well with us. If it was just your own corporation, then perhaps it would not have, but we'll take note of that, Gayatri. Yes. Employability of who?
Of, say, people with disability, or even the kind of category that Tony talked about.
And anything that you do in that domain will definitely count as CSR, 100%. Now we'll do a last round of questions, and what I'll do is I'll go around this room once. So if you miss your chance, I'm not going to come back, right? I'll start here with the first row. Yes, sir.
What is the oversight by the ministry, and how do you prevent then this becoming a watchdog? So you need oversight, at the same time you don't want to breathe down upon the corporate. How are you proposing to balance this? I'm sure it's clear in your mind, so I wanted everybody to
I'll give you a straight answer. For every question, I'll give you as straight and as honest an answer as I can. 1. Sorry? He says, what would be the oversight watchdog mechanism from the ministry side? Straight answer to that question is, we will check if you are one of the companies that fall within the Section 135 provisions. 1. If you do, have you filed your return? That's it. If you have not filed, then of course we'll send you a notice and request you to file. But we will limit ourselves in the first instance only to tick marking yes or no. Get my point? Because it's hard for us to analyze 9,000 reports and to say this satisfies that. We don't want to get into that domain at all, at least not even to begin with. We just don't have the mechanism or even the desire to do that. I missed you. Yes, sir. Yeah, yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yeah, please.
Sorry. We are a life insurance company, and we have our life insurance products. And for example, you spoke about rural development. So if we have rural products, which is no profit, no loss, which would be helpful for the people in the rural area, will it be considered?
Yes, of course. All I'm saying is you convert that into a project or a program.
Yeah.
You must be able to satisfy us that it's not just profit driven.
Absolutely.
If there is a social benefit,
Yeah.
you will also need to quantify that social benefit. When you start it as a program, the difficulty is many people say this is an innovative business program, which is a business model, which will also help the community.
Okay.
So when you plan that program, you would say that from this program, the social benefit will accrue will be rupees 50.
Okay.
You need to just say that. That's enough.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Sir, does the bill suggest any possibility of forming a corporate NGO or a civil society connect? Basically, how do they select the NGOs? Where will the NGOs come from? Is it a consultative process? They empanel 5-10 NGOs?
Now, this is a
in
very, very
different
good
sectors?
question. Wherever I go, corporates ask, NGOs ask. Corporates ask, all right, you want us to partner with NGOs. Number one, where are they? Because there aren't enough of them, number one. Number two, where are the good ones? By good, they mean credible. Can we go to one source and say, somebody has listed the credible ones? This is the corporate side of the picture. And they want to pick out from such an established list. Possibly also, NGOs would want to know who among them have been empaneled. And therefore, when they go and seek work from corporates, there is a natural connect. And I think that's the second major role that IICA is going to play. As Secretary of the Public Sector, I had set up what came to be known as the TIS Hub. We had located in the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, perhaps the best social science institute, not only in India, but across the world. And their credibility is so high that they set a list of parameters and they asked NGOs to apply. And at last count, they'd done a little bit more than 140 NGOs had been empaneled by them. So many companies in the public sector and outside found that list to be a very useful source from which they could pick up. Now we are actually going to make this a national hub. And that national hub will be located in the IICA. That vertical will be headed by Gayatri herself. And we will subsume TIS and the work that they have done in the national hub. So TIS will continue to be an important partner in that exercise. Much of the credentials and the criteria that they have established has stood the test of time and the respect of the international agencies. So we will now ask NGOs to seek empanelment from us. We will set down the application procedure. Then more and more NGOs can apply, get themselves empaneled, and more corporates can just click of a button, I want to do education project in Hoshangabad. And you will get from us a possible list of 3 empaneled agencies which could do that work well for you. You can choose from there. So that's another important thing that we are going to do.
Could we also set up a consultative process in project making? Because they, you make a lot of project proposals, you send to different corporates, and finally, out of 100, maybe 1 gets selected or 1 gets to the board.
Yes, ma'am. So we are doing that cloud project.
Yeah.
So all good projects, we're going to be on the IICA cloud. And anyone who wants a good project, why should you manufacture on your own? If we are able to provide a shelf of projects which corporates can look at, then we would be happy to do that. And more than one corporate or one agency or one organization can look at that. So we will have that process also.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am.
So I just wanted to ask you, government has a number of projects, right?
Are you getting impatient? No? Okay.
So like, for example, rural development or public health and so on. Will there be an opportunity to look at, have a view of some of those projects? Because there could be a large scale kind of projects which we can.
Yes, of course.
Will it kind of somewhere, will ICICI kind of put up these kind of projects?
Yes, we will. But what I wanted to say was...
the only thing is one needs to be really careful about what is CSR and what is business.
We will tell you, we will guide you. That's the whole reason why we will set up our consultancy services. Please do not duplicate what government is doing. If government is digging a tank, don't dig another tank next to it. But please complement or supplement, if you want, what government is doing. If government is digging a 10-foot tank and the villagers demand that, if it were 2 feet or 3 feet deeper, it would retain enough water. But government didn't have the resources. And you decide we will dig 3 more feet than the government has done. Then that is supplementing government's efforts. If you find in the midday meal that government is offering, it's just rice and dal and nothing else, and you prefer to add a boiled egg to it, that's your contribution. So whatever you do by way of supplementation or complementation will always be welcome, but don't put monies in government coffers. Don't contribute to government funds. Government has enough money. I talked about 15,000 crores from the corporate sector. What is the budget? Let me just tell you how small we should feel before we puff ourselves up. What is the budget of one department of the Government of India, the Rural Development Ministry? What's the budget? Any idea?
Few lakh thousand crores.
Under Jairam Ramesh is just crossing 100 lakh crores. Government doesn't need your money. What is the average budget of a district magistrate? What is the average budget of a collector? For only development works. 300 crores. He doesn't need your money. Don't waste your time, don't waste your charity. Government has enough money, more than enough money. We are not in the business of supplementing government. Do your projects yourselves, do it your own way, and don't even by mistake contribute to government coffers. Okay, that's what I wanted to tell you. Right, so we'll take this fast now because we have a time limit. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so considering that we are not supposed to supplement it to the already running government programs.
Yes, you must
but
supplement. Why should we not supplement?
In monetary terms.
Yes, you must.
Okay.
Do projects that add on to what the government is doing.
Okay. Now, at the executional level, a problem which we generally face is, suppose being a core sector industry, you move into a region, you have beyond your compliances, you already have a plan in place, you consult with the community, you consult with whatever target population. At times, maybe some detrimental forces in the community have a very contradicting expectations to that of the DC. Or Sarpanch and the other party could add to a very third angle to whatever your schemes, your program is. So in such a condition, how can we consider the expenditure as a real measuring tool against the impact created? OP.
That's an abstract question. You do the job and then we'll do an impact study. But first do the project. Yes. We'll come back. We're going around the table once.
This presentation was basically about the companies bills, and with respect to organizations and corporates, are there separate guidelines for NGOs? Because if we plan to train volunteers or conduct special training for change managers who we plan to employ, can we give them an honorarium? Can we budget that as a project cost?
NGOs are free to do whatever they like. It's fresh air. Just do whatever you like. No shackles.
But
nothing.
But can it be built into the project cost for sponsorship?
Sorry?
It can
Yes,
be
of
built
course,
in.
it's your
Alright.
project.
Sure.
Definitely.
Thank you.
The last thing I want to do is rein in NGOs. All right. Yes, sir.
Can we do the registration in the CSR now?
You can. For what? For empanelment?
Empanelment.
Yeah, definitely. Only remember, you should have been registered as an organization for at least 3 years. Otherwise, you're free. Yes, sir.
Is TISS hub is going to continue?
Of
And
course.
what type
of
of
course.
support they are giving right now to the NGOs?
They're not giving any support. The only support is if you apply to them, they will empanel you. That empanelment process takes about 6 to 7 months. But if you are empaneled by TIS, then you are hugely recognized. Yeah. I know, yes, quick.
Foreign corporate houses who are working in India, are they also bound with the CSR 2013?
Sorry?
Foreign corporate houses who are working in India, but they are registered outside India, are they also bound to be?
Not bound, but we would love them. IBM, if they did some CSR projects in India, we would love them. Yes, next please. Anyone else here? Yes, ma'am.
The extension of the discussion on diversity, I personally have been part of the corporate where we look at diversity under the HR portfolio. So, to link it back to CSR would be a very huge exercise and can generate a lot of biases. This is just a cautionary thought.
That's exactly where IBM is doing its research.
Yes.
And as I said, he's trying to make it cross corporates
absolutely.
rather than just, yes, sir.
That's another.
Anything else here? Quickly, yes, sir.
So just one more point. What about safety and security? Because in the wake of the current global concerns, safety seems to be a huge...
Safety in the workplace?
In safety, community safety, safety in the workplace. Safety in the workplace is taken care of by
The
policies.
company, yeah, it's an employee issue.
Yes, but in terms of NGOs, like for example, you started your whole discourse with the Naxal context.
Sure.
So it's worth thinking about. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Yes.
So first of all, I want to thank you for just listing that art and culture in that schedule.
Thank you, thank you.
I feel greatly motivated after that one slide.
All right.
And the second thing is that you have education in the first slide.
Yeah,
and that's already
yeah,
done.
yeah.
And taking off from what Mr. Tony has just asked about diversity, you know, India is a land with it's a diverse culture. There's an opportunity to bring unity in the diversity through art and culture.
Of course.
And education about culture. So do you consider that?
Of course, education about culture is very much part of it. Yes, yes.
Backward regions are largely deprived of government support as well as corporate support. So I think CSR, if it put some money for that, that is really sure.
We're actually going to list those 272 backward districts, and we're going to appeal to corporates to try and locate whatever they can in those 272, plus the 44 I mentioned, Naxal affected. Yes, 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 ma'am.
When you presented, you talked about many of the activities that is going to be put under CSR activities. To me, it sounds like more welfaristic activities. So how about also looking at the right-based activities? For example,
Rights-based.
Yeah.
Yeah, like child rights, we said.
Yeah, I mean, as you know, I'm more interested for the disability. It is written just welfare measures for
If you
disabled
do
people,
anything,
but
see, rights by themselves is a question of what programs you would build to build in more awareness of rights. I mean, how would you make it into a
it's
program?
like empowering the people with disabilities and then, creating awareness among them about their own rights.
So create a program
also
around that.
yeah.
It's most welcome. Yes, ma'am. Why not? Anyone. That's part of women's empowerment. Yeah.
Before a company embarks on any initiative, on any program that is not on your list, then would it be possible for the company to approach you to find out whether it would qualify under
Of course,
CSR?
because in the MCA, we have the financial returns of all companies who are registered. So if there is any question, we'd be happy to give you an authoritative answer. All right, we're running out of time completely. Yes, sir. Yours is the last question.
Very quickly. Much of industry is quite disruptive, either in terms of carbon emissions and effluents, which are more obvious, but there are social implications, rehabilitation over long periods of time. Gradually, there is a tendency to mix up all this into CSR activities, which is really not that. It is more of risk mitigation and abatement. How would you differentiate that getting mixed up with CSR?
Yeah, that's actually one of the more difficult questions. And it's very hard for me to build a boundary wall there. But we will try to respect the opinion of corporates themselves, and we'll request them that what you spend as part of just risk mitigation or damage control should not be your CSR contribution to society. So we hope that code will be followed. So thank you. We've run completely out of time. Thank you for giving me the space and the patient hearing.
Very much, Dr. Chatterjee, for the excellent explanation and analysis of the changes to the companies bill. I think that'll help everyone moving forward in forging public-private partnerships. So on that note, we're going to break for lunch. I'd like to ask that everyone be back at 2 o'clock so that we can start our afternoon discussions. Thank you.